The air was thick with the salty scent of the sea, or so it seemed to the peanuts. To them, the beach was the roasty-toasty domain of a bustling peanut roast stand nestled along the vibrant streets of London. The roaring engines of red double-decker buses with their crashing waves, and the scatter of breadcrumbs and sidewalk grime their sandy shores. In the peanut bin, life was simple yet precarious. They huddled together as passers-by perused the stand, hoping not to be plucked out by those monstrous shadowy hands. For some, it was just the way of things, a part of their purpose, ending in salt-crusted snack packets. But for Peanut Joe, it was a nightmare he couldn't accept. "This is no way to live, or to end," muttered Peanut Joe to his friend Peanut Bernie, as they nestled deep into the warm heap. They were constantly jostled by the vibrations of the stand being nudged by customers. "We have to escape. There's got to be more out there. Something better. Freedom, Bernie!" "Joe, you and your wild dreams," Bernie replied with a sigh, though there was a glint of longing in his tiny peanut eyes as he glanced wistfully toward the edge of the bin. "You're going to get yourself roasted, salted, and sold for 50 pence, same as the rest of us." Just then she arrived. Peanut Ellie tumbled into the bin in all her toasted glory, a caramel-toned peanut with a soft glisten under the flickering street lamps. She'd been accidentally dropped by the vendor as he grabbed a handful of peanuts for a customer. And in that moment, with the chaos of London swirling around them, Peanut Joe felt something he'd never felt before. Her voice was smooth as roasted butter. "What's freedom worth if you don't have anyone to share it with?" Joe stared at Ellie, parts of him swelling with courage he never knew he had. "It's worth everything," he said, his peanut heart thudding. "But I'm not leaving here without you." Suddenly, a shadow fell over the pile of peanuts, the vendor's hand. With a gasp, Joe and Ellie were both scooped into his hand, their world tilting at a horrifying angle as they slid in alongside a dozen of their comrades. The wrinkled walls of a paper bag loomed around them, trapping them in the suffocating folds. "Hold on!" Joe shouted, desperately wriggling as the vendor tied the bag shut and handed them over to a customer. The light outside grew dimmer as they were whisked away by the stranger, each jarring footstep carrying them further from their beachside haven and any chance of freedom. "Is this how it ends?" Bernie despaired, his voice muffled in the peanut heap. "No," Joe growled, his resolve hardening as he pressed himself against the bag's edge. "Not today." Ellie's voice cut through the darkness. "What's the plan, Joe?" Joe didn't hesitate. "We roll?" It was a crazy, almost suicidal idea, but the bag tilted long enough for the peanuts to shift as one. With a collective effort, Joe, Ellie, and Bernie threw their weight against the paper wall, breaking through the weak seam with a sharp tear. They tumbled out and scattered across the sidewalk, dodging oblivious pedestrians and the enormous crushing soles of their shoes. The customer didn't notice until it was too late. The peanuts had rolled into a storm drain, where they huddled in the narrow dark with water rushing beneath them. Joe's laugh echoed through the damp hollow. "We did it! We're out!" But their celebration was cut short by a familiar sound, heavy boots stomping above them. The vendor, realizing the escape, was back to collect his prized peanuts. His booming voice called out, and they could hear the swishing of a net as he swept through the crowd in fury. "We're not out of the woods," Ellie said grimly. She grabbed Joe's hand, or rather, nudged his side with hers, and together they rolled deeper into the storm drain. Their journey grew darker and more treacherous as the drain carried them into the unknown. At every twist and turn, Joe stayed close to Ellie, feeling a strange sense of safety with her by his side. When they finally emerged into the open air from the other end of the drain, the moonlit streets stretched wide before them, a sprawling world of freedom. Joe glanced at Ellie. "We made it." Ellie nodded, though tears glistened in her almond-shaped eyes. "Joe, thank you." But their moment was shattered by the roar of an engine. A delivery van sped toward them, its wheels screeching on the wet pavement. Joe acted without thinking. "Run, Ellie! Go!" Before he could finish, Ellie yanked him away from the van just in time, both of them tumbling into a bed of grass. Their peanut shells were scuffed, but they were alive. As they lay in the damp grass, Joe turned to Ellie. "I couldn't have done this without you, and I wouldn't have had the courage without you," Ellie replied softly. Under the glow of a distant street lamp, they rolled closer together, their small, resilient bodies leaning into one another. It wasn't the beach in the storybooks they'd heard about. It was far better. They were free, scarred but alive, with their whole world ahead of them, together. Back at the peanut roast stand, the vendor cursed his misfortune, but among the escaped peanuts, love and freedom quietly triumphed. Every salty snack deserved a salty story, but Joe and Ellie's was more than that. It was a miracle,